the co-owner and head of business development for Sports Mentalytics. And Casey's going to be taking us through the mental side of lacrosse and sharing a bunch about his platform. So Casey, welcome and thanks for being with us.
No, thank you so much. Really excited to be here and to talk with you and to present to everybody. I think for me, probably the most important thing for you guys to understand is to have a little bit more of a background on my story and know who I am before I get into sharing our software and platform and ultimately what we do as a company. And it's all geared around measuring and developing mindset and what we coin measuring and developing your athletic mindset, which I will absolutely get into. And for those of you who stay to the end of this, I am going to give out a free link for any coach to invite any of their athletes to partake in and try out the platform. Whether you're a parent, coach, or athlete, I'm going to give you access to this. So hopefully you guys stay around. But I was a New York guy that grew up playing baseball. And when I was 12 years old, some of the parents on the baseball team told my mom that they thought I should try playing lacrosse. And a lot of the really good athletes in our town were making this transition and jump from baseball to lacrosse. And I was nervous about it, but I did. And I played 1 year at PAL at 12 years old, or 11 years old before I went to junior high. And as you guys know, when you get to junior high school, baseball and lacrosse are the same season. So I had to make a choice, play baseball or lacrosse. And I had played baseball my entire life, and I chose lacrosse. I just had this kind of gut feeling that it was the sport that made the most sense for me, and that there was this real opportunity to go on and play in high school and so on and so forth. And if you fast forward to my senior year at Baldwin High School, I was playing well, but I wasn't getting the looks that I had anticipated or wanted. And so largely I was this unrecruited high school athlete with these aspirations of playing lacrosse at a high level, at a D1 level. And I was getting recruited by a couple schools that were smaller. But my mind was really set on trying to play at the best potential school out there. I had applied to Towson University and got in as a student. And at let's call it the 11th hour, my high school coach, Jim Casper, made a phone call to Tony Seaman, and they said, sure, we'll have him come down on a trip. And they basically said, we know you've gotten into the school. We can make room for you this year, but it's basically at your own risk. We're not going to treat you as a walk-on, but you're not going to be a part of our recruiting class. And if you want to take that chance, you basically have a year to prove yourself, and we'll keep you around. And if not, we reserve the rights to kind of release you. And I left that trip with my mind basically made up that I was going to go play at Towson and take the chance. And I also had people kind of already calling and congratulating me that I was going. And so I basically was like, my hand was forced a bit, and I took the risk, and I went to Towson. And the remainder of that school year, a month later, Towson went on a run to the Final Four. And I went from being this unrecruited guy to going to a team that lost in the semifinals to Princeton and was the number 3 ranked school in the country. So pretty much a rude awakening when I got there, from being an unrecruited kid to going and playing lacrosse with a bunch of grown men that were out to kill you every single day. But I just made it work, and I found a knack, and eventually going into my sophomore year, they asked me to play defensive midi, and the conversation went a little bit like this: do you want to play? And my answer was, of course. They said, great, now you're defensive midi. And from that moment, my mindset was different, and it changed. And the group of upperclassmen that I had been playing with, there was only 4 or 5 of us on the whole team. They took me under their wing, and I never left the field for 4 years. Became a 2-time captain and All-American. Had a great college career, and then still ranked amongst the top 50 players in school history. I was a number of accolades there. And then And then my senior year, my coach at the time, Sean Nadalin, asked if I was going to play Major League Lacrosse. And at that time, I didn't even know that, I had known it existed, but it was still fairly new. And I said, do you think I can play? And his answer was, you definitely can. And so I put my name in the hat of the draft, and I went to this combine, and I was with the 50 best players in the country, and I pretty much was pooping my pants. But once again, when I got there, I did the best I could and had the right mindset, and I got picked up 20th overall. And that was on a Wednesday night at Sacred Heart University. On Friday night, I was on a plane to Denver. On Saturday night, I was in the lineup playing, and I stayed in the lineup consistently for Denver for 7 straight seasons, and lost 4 MLL championships with Denver, and then was eventually traded by my former Towson coach, Tony Seaman, away, because he had become the coach in Denver. And I finished up my career playing with the Charlotte Hounds, and then eventually as a player for Team Israel in the 2014 World Games, before I coached with Team Israel in the 2018 World Games. So needless to say, my career path and choice from going to Towson really shaped a lot of my life in the lacrosse world. And for most of you guys out there that lacrosse, while I played professional lacrosse, I've been in the sales and marketing world for a various number of startups and companies. I met Dr. Brian Marintet in 2016. And from the second I met Brian and understood what he was trying to do from a company perspective and from a science and research standpoint, I knew I just had to be a part of it. And Brian he's an expert in statistics and analytics, and he has a PhD in industrial organizational psychology, and he's built over 50 assessments in his career. He builds most of his assessments for military, fire departments, police departments. He works with citywide organizations, and he took a year hiatus and gathered all of the latest research in 2016 on industrial organizational psychology and sports psychology, and he built an assessment to measure how athletes think while they compete in sports. And we're now on version 3 of his assessment. I've become a financial partner, and we relaunched everything in the end of 2019 at the IMLCA Lacrosse Coaches Convention. And once this COVID hit, we decided we're going to offer for free to any program that's looking for ways to develop their athletes mentally. And in the last month alone, I've onboarded over 1,500 athletes and coaches to the platform. I have roughly 30 or 40 Division I schools. I have Yale and UPenn and Towson and Hofstra and Virginia Commonwealth and Virginia Tech, and not just lacrosse, some other sports as well. And so I'll leave it at that, and I'll pause before I share my screen and jump into the platform. I know I'm talking fast, but I guess, Stephen, I'll leave it to you if you have any questions, or there are any questions from the group before I share my screen and start walking people through what our platform represents and how to really use it to its best capabilities.
Yeah, before we have you jump into that full, with both feet, just to let everyone know, the chat function is basically disabled, I believe. So we want everything to go into the Q&A section, so you see where the Q&A is. So if you have a question, feel free to type it in there, and I will see it, and I'll pass it on to Casey so that Casey, you can address them, but you can just focus on your page. And I know Brad MacArthur, who's done most of the work organizing this event, has mentioned that he uses Sports Mentalytics pretty frequently. He's a regular user. He's a firm believer. He's very particular about the software and the programs that he uses, and has found that this is very useful for him.
Yeah, no, and I don't know how many of you out there are watching or just finished watching The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. When it comes to mindset, he was above and beyond even the greatest athletes of all time. And the one thing that I will say here is, and this is something that it's not just, hey, you understand it and you can use it. mindset is an ongoing development, just like everything else in your life, and it's going to evolve and it's going to change and it's going to have ups and downs in your life. And if you can start understanding where you are at a current period of time in your life, and you can have that measurable, you can then take the necessary steps to go develop that situation or that skill set. But if you don't measure it, it's really difficult to do so. And so this is what the platform looks like. I am logged in as if I'm a coach. I'll show you guys a couple of things, but the first thing I'm going to show you is what the platform will look like. And I am looking as if I am a coach at one of my players, Eric Cantor right here. He is part of Team Israel's 2018 national team. I can toggle between my athletes here. And these are the 3 phases in which we measure: preparation, competition, and teamwork. Everything is clickable. So if I click preparation, there will be a drop down. And I'm actually going to read this for you. The preparation factors are made up of several key dimensions that affect the athlete's practice habits and development work, both short and long term. This preparation factors provide insight into the athlete's attitude, mindset during practice and preparation, coachability, and ability to achieve long-term goals. So these 3 factors, work style, coachability, and grit, are all tied to preparation. And for each one of these factors, you're going to get a score for an athlete. And I'm also going to get a definition of what this factor means that we're measuring. And once again, I'll explain, what does it mean to be coachable, right? What does coachability mean? And then from there, we break this down into detailed scoring. So rather than me saying to a kid, I need you to be more coachable, what I'm going to tell a kid is, hey, here are the sub-dimensions or micro dimensions that make up the category of coachability. And they are modesty, feedback, acceptance, and cooperation. And here's how you scored. And here's your current mindset. And here's a game plan for developing each one of these micro dimensions, which will ultimately make you more coachable and which will ultimately allow you to prepare better. Does that make sense, Stephen, from just understanding what the platform, the shape and feel right here? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute myself because I don't want to have whatever I'm doing interrupting while you're going. So we do have a question actually from Christopher Stevenson, if you want to touch on it, because he's wondering what age range you'd initially use this, and what age is it, I guess, first beneficial to start?
No, that's a great question. HIPAA laws will only allow us to go down to the age 13 and up, and we have 13-year-olds and junior high, which is basically 13, 14 is junior high, all of high school, and college and professional athletes that have used this. We have Olympic athletes that have used it. Our database, while being young and new in the landscape of kind of measuring this, we have over 5,000 unique athletes who have taken our assessment. And so we're measuring the data amongst all of those athletes every time you take it.
And when you use it on a younger player, like a 13, 14-year-old versus a professional player,
Yep.
Is there a difference in what you do with the information? Or is there a difference in the way it's collected or the way it shows, or is it basically the same across platforms?
Yeah, the short answer is no. And the reason being is the mindset of that athlete is going to be unique based on his current situation and landscape. And typically what we've found is obviously Olympic athletes and professional athletes, they tend to know who they are and what they're really good at. And they tend to be not more aggressive, but they tend to know exactly what they're thinking in certain situations, and they'll obviously score higher. But the goal is always learn, measure, and then develop. And obviously you can score really high at a young age, but that may not stay constant, and it's going to evolve. You may be the stud in 8th grade as a JV player, right? And you may score really high, and then you get to 9th grade and now you're getting beat up, and all of a sudden you take this assessment and your scores alter and they change based on your situation, right? And so this is an evolving process. And for anyone who takes our assessment and uses the platform, they have access for an entire year. And we recommend that you take it a couple times throughout the year. And so there are 8 main factors that we measure: leadership potential, team orientation, mental toughness, focus, drive, and they'll all be tied back always to a phase and in the understanding of this is one athlete's mindset, right? And this is everything that he will think about situationally in practice in the game. And I'll jump into just mental toughness because I know that's a big one. But how does an athlete handle stress? How does he deal with problems or cope with problems? And what is his level of confidence, right? And for everything, there's always going to be a definition, a current mindset, and a game plan. And right now, the reporting platform is talking directly to a coach or a parent, right? So, help Eric by ensuring that he continues to think about himself in a positive manner. Otherwise, Eric will require very little encouragement from you to keep his confidence up, right? So obviously his confidence level is fairly high. And there's these little snippets of information that we are going to deliver to a coach and that he's going to have access to ongoing, whether it's on a laptop, tablet, or a phone. It's on mobile first. And then the last thing that we look at is these situational mindsets. And it's kind of a collective view of an athlete. How does he deal with setbacks? How does he perform under pressure? Is he a team leader? Am I a coach that is focused on my current captain, but am I developing my future captains, right? Who has those intangibles to be a team leader or a team player, right? And as a coach, now I have this blueprint on my guys of, which ones can I push, which ones do I have to talk to a little bit differently. And then what I'm going to show you here in a bit is the complete reverse side of this is athletes get their own version of this report. So now we're developing an athlete at the baseline from himself and from a coach from the top down. And we can even do it from a parent or an organization. So we can start facilitating and shaping and molding a kid's mindset and teaching him how to leverage some of these, situations and mindsets and ultimately mental skills, which I'm going to get into in a second. Before I jump out of this particular individual platform, I'm going to show you two other things on the coach's side. If you're a coach and you are looking at your entire team, you're probably saying, oh my God, now there's 50 reports or 40 reports that I have to look at from a team standpoint. Well, we can also toggle, and I'll just pull up this JV team in the DC area, but I'll actually break down a report and show you a cumulative score for your athletes, and we'll bucket the athletes into low, moderate, or high. So you can, at a snapshot, get an understanding of your team's strengths and weaknesses. So the report looks very similar, right? If I look at this and I'm like, okay, well, focus is pretty low, and that makes sense. They're a JV lacrosse team, right? And I click into focus. Well, 3 of the athletes are low, 2 are moderate, right? If this was a team of 50 or 100 athletes, there'd be 50 or 100 athletes all in this category, somewhere bucketed low, moderate, or high. So now as a coach, I may say, well, if I have 15 guys that they're are low when it comes to focus, maybe this is something I need to pay attention to or work on in practice, in the weight room. Maybe it's something I need to constantly, bring up and talk about because I know my guys struggle with it, right? I've already given you this blueprint. 20 out of your 25 guys, have scored low in focus. Focus is something I need to harp on. Maybe my drills need to be shorter. Maybe and you can start leveraging the information for what it's provided you.
And obviously in that case, when you're talking, like when you say leveraging it and applying it, your two options are find ways to bring their focus scores up, or like you said, do things that don't require as much focus. I guess maybe the latter in the short term and trying to build the scores in the longer term.
I get this question all the time. There are 100 ways you can look at this information and leverage it and manipulate it at the individual level, at the team level, at an entire organizational level, right? My goal is to shed light on that information and then work with you and help you uncover ways that we can actually develop kids. And if we can develop them and teach them about mindset and these particular categories, it's going to translate into how they practice, how they prepare, how they watch film, how they act in a weight room, how they work on their skill set, how they, strap their helmets on and compete, right? Because if I can affect mindset, I can affect everything. If I effectively teach someone about nutrition, which is by the way, very important, I've then taught them about one thing, nutrition. But if I can teach them about mindset, I can impact nutrition. I can impact practice. I can impact weight room. I can impact how an athlete talks to a coach or his parents, right? I can impact everything in their life. And so to me, this is one of the reasons I'm so passionate about this is, I mean, I can create real change, and I can do it in a way that's fun and educational for a kid that otherwise would not have had this information. And I can do it in a way for a coach that can provide tangible feedback to an athlete and to a parent and kid in a way that's not confrontational. It's, here's your score, here's how you currently think. Now let's start looking at the game plan and developing you so you can get better.
I'm curious, sorry if I can jump in for a sec, the numbers that we're seeing and the levels, you talked about a low, medium, and high level of the various categories, and what are the boundaries between low and medium and high? Because I think one thing is these days there's been there's a lot of discussion in schools about how kids have to get certain grades or the parents get mad at the teachers.
It's a great question. 1 through 33, 34 is considered low. 35 to 66 is actually considered average, moderate, and 66 and higher is high. And that's one thing that scares kids, because they'll get a 50 and be like, oh my God, I failed. Meanwhile, 50 is actually very average in how we rank our T-score. But I always tell kids, the score doesn't matter. It really doesn't, right? Yes, I want to know what I'm good and bad at, but it doesn't matter. It's a baseline. This is how you currently think right now at this point in time in your life. This is how your teammates think at this point in their time in their life. And you may be dealing with other things outside of your sport that have affected this. But if I can tangibly show you this, and I can do it in a way where I give it to a kid on their phone and they can click through and listen to some skill sets, and I'm going to show you that in a second, well, then I've done it in a way that I can actually get through to them and reach it, as opposed to maybe a 500-page book or another assignment, or I've done it in a way that's unique and different that they haven't seen before.
Yeah, cool.
So I'm going to just show you the management side of this. Is when there's only 3 tabs: get, assess, view results, and manage teams. I can create 1 team or 100 teams. As you can see, I'm tied to a whole bunch of teams. Sometimes they're just 4 coaches or somebody at an organization that I've wanted to take the assessment. And once you create a team, which is here, it takes 2 seconds. Team name, affiliation, you're going to be likely a coach or assistant coach, the sport, the level. That will be saved right here. If I go into, let's say, the Atlanta Falcons, which I know there's one administrator that should be in this, right? So Justin Schaff, we'll just leave it. He works for the Atlanta Falcons. If I wanted to invite more people to this team, I can click invite, and I just copy and paste their email address right here. When I go to choose who they are, I choose if they're an athlete or a coach or an assistant coach. And as soon as I hit send invite, it'll prompt them. They'll receive an email. It'll prompt them to create an account and take their assessment, and they'll get this platform. So I'm going to log out, and I'm going to show you the reverse side of this as if I'm an athlete, because I think so often coaches, they want to see what the platform looks like for their standpoint, but really is this going to be effective for the athlete, and what are the athletes going to see? And I like showing both sides of this thing to coaches. And I believe there are coaches and administrators and probably parents and a whole host of people on here. So it'll be good to share both sides. It looks very similar, right? Everything is timestamped. So if you see, there will be timestamps. So if I take this assessment multiple times, I can toggle between my reports. But there are some subtle nuances and differences once you go into the category. So leadership potential, I'll jump in here. Current mindset game plan. Now I'm talking to the athlete directly, and there is this button here that says listen to your report. If I click this button, a audio sound cloud at the bottom will pop up, and in actually, some cases, you enjoy. I'll pause it, but it'll actually read this section right to me as an athlete. So now, instead of reading this, I can listen to it in my headphones. The other thing that I'm going to show you here is with audio is all of these categories, or I would say a whole host of them, we offer this mental skill. So right now we're in the category sociability, which is tied to team orientation and teamwork, right?
Mhm.
Here's the current mindset. Here's the game plan for this athlete. This mental skill uses we reference goal setting. So now an athlete's going to say, maybe I know how to, use goal setting. Maybe I don't. Well, there's a mental skills guide here. When you click on it, there are 6 options. When I click on goal setting, which is right here, same thing, a 5-minute audio sound cloud will populate, and Dr. Brian will explain to an athlete how to use goal setting. Coming soon in the very near future, there will be mental skills delivered by Colonel John O'Grady, Andy Reese, the performance coach for the Colorado Rockies, and a host of sports psychologists and performance coaches putting their spin onto these mental skills, some sport specific, some in generality, but by other professionals as well. So this will eventually become a resource and a bank of information for any athlete. And as you go through the platform, you'll see that we reference different mental skills for different categories, pending the factor that we're measuring. I'll just click on, let's say, focus.
I like seeing the rowing in there. I was a former national team rower in Canada, and it was interesting. I read a book called Psyched by Terry Orlick and John Partington, and that was a
Yep.
huge element for me. And that's going back. This is far. I think it's quite advanced, obviously, relative to what they were doing then. But it was huge, the difference it made. I still remember just learning about visualization. And when I got to the University of Victoria and was trying to make the varsity boat, and we were racing, and I was racing against guys who either had or would win medals at the Worlds and Olympics, and I visualized myself, internally and externally, like being in the boat and looking out, being in the varsity boat, and the racing, and it makes a huge difference. And this seems like this seems like it really guides you a bit more than just reading the book and having to apply it. This seems like it's so directed at what you need specifically.
So the idea here is, and I'll be completely honest. One of the struggles that we've had internally is deciding how much or how little information to provide an athlete and a coach.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we talked about a year ago was all of these 9 tiles potentially being locked, and essentially you having to read through this category to then unlock your score and graph on being a team leader, and then unlocking, the next one, and basically building a curriculum. The reason we decided to offer it all up front is we never wanted to hold an athlete or coach back from diving in really deep on all of his information at once, versus the athlete who wants to, like myself, read a small snippet of information, digest it, and take that snippet, and the next day maybe read a new snippet. But you can 100% build an entire curriculum off of just this information over the course of 30 days or 60 days as a coach or an organization, and really work kids through this entire concept of understanding who they are as athletes, and make it apply. And I have incredible case studies and stories about high school athletes, field hockey players that have had success literally in a matter of weeks. I'll share one. A good friend of mine growing up, Christine Bilia, her name's Christine Body now. She's a field hockey coach at a high-end private high school in New York, and she's been coaching there for 14 years. She bought the assessment for her field hockey team this year. It was roughly 18 girls. Before one of their weekend scrimmages, she goes up to one of the girls who's a junior and says, "What the heck are you doing?" And the girl says, "My report says I get really nervous before big games, and I'm practicing one of the relaxation techniques, one of the breathing techniques." So Christine's kind of like, the team's warming up over here. Okay, whatever. Christine puts her in the game. In the 4th quarter, she scores the game-winning goal. And after the game, Christine calls me freaking out. "You're not going to believe this. You got to hear about the story. This girl who never scores for me scored the game-winning goal, and she was practicing one of the techniques that she learned in your report." Now, if the story ended there, I'd be like, great, we've done something really cool, but it doesn't. All of the girls on the team noticed it. So now the 17 other girls started diving into their reports and reading the information and practicing this stuff. And midway through the season, they came to Christine and said, we feel that you know us better this year than you ever have in the past. And Christine won conference coach of the year for her conference, based on us effectively having one girl essentially buy into this information, and that snowball effect happening to the team and to Christine, and then buying in and using this information. She didn't change anything else about her physical coaching, but the mindset and the approach for her connecting with her girls was much greater this year than it has been in the past. And that's just one cool story. And so I'm excited to deliver this and offer it to a whole host of athletes. We're only offering it for free for the next couple of months. Come fall next year, when things get back to a little bit more normal, we'll likely have to go back to our paid subscription type model, in which you can purchase this for a team or an athlete individually for an entire year. But for right now, we're offering it for free. And Stephen, I'll give you guys a link for any coach or any athlete that wants to, and you guys can repurpose it out whenever you guys want. But that, in a nutshell, is both the individual athlete platform and the coaches platform. And I'm just excited to be here having a conversation with you guys about it, because any chance I have to talk about this and understanding the mindset of what it takes to be successful at any level is really important. And to me, it all starts with the measurement, and then leveraging the information of the measurement to actually go do the work and be successful. But without that measurement, it's really difficult to know who you are and how you think, especially in sports that are so complicated.
Yeah, we have a question in the Q&A, and I've got a question as well. The question from Danielle Delizio is, with user ranges from 13 through adult athletes, it's a big range. So how do you implement developmental considerations when teaching strategies? You know, I guess she's gonna, does it change as an athlete? Is it different stages in their career? And I would add, does it change as they get more familiar with these tools and start applying them?
Absolutely. I wish I could give you a simple answer of this is what you do at this certain age range. You know, I can tell you the conversations I have with sports psychologists and mental performance coaches is, one mental performance coach would say, oh, we need to work on our weakness and develop that weakness and do everything we can so we're not so weak there. And other performance coaches and Olympic level athletes may say, I know I'm not good at that and I don't care, but I'm really good at this, and I'm going to go be an expert, and I'm going to be the best I possibly can be in this. And so I'm going to hone in on those skills. And it might be that 1% difference that they're looking for, right, at that elite level. From my standpoint, most kids that are 13, 14, 15, even early high school, they've never seen this stuff before. So why not allow them to work through most of this stuff collectively and develop a broad range and understanding how to leverage the 6 mental skills and understanding these mindsets, because they've never really been taught it before, and let them use this so they can start preparing and hopefully play at the college level, as opposed to that really high level Olympic or professional athlete that may know their strengths and weaknesses and may have a mindset already developed that they're just looking to tweak and adjust one particular thing.
So it sounds like a lot of how you would apply it as a coach or an organizational leader would depend on how the athlete interacts with it, what they're taking from themselves, and then you
absolutely right. Like it's, as a coach, do you want to build this into your curriculum and program and have touch points and have it part of your, pre-practice meeting every single day, and we're talking about this constantly? Do you want to, offer it and then just shoot out an email once a week? Do you want to, constantly harp on 1 or 2 particular things from a team level, before you go into the weight room or going out to practice based on the strengths and weaknesses of that team? There are literally 100 ways to look at this information and leverage it at the individual level, at the team level, at an entire organizational level, right? If you run a youth lacrosse program from ages 13 to 17, well, maybe you're trying to develop them into being the best leaders possible. And maybe you're pulling up leadership potential and you're talking about constantly integrity and assertiveness. and that's part of your mission, right? Like there's just so many intangibles of how to use the information.
Um, the other question I had, you talked about how coming out of high school, you thought you were a pretty good athlete, but you weren't very highly recruited. And when you got to Towson, that a lot of it was your mental approach, that you just felt like you had the right mindset, and that's what allowed you to succeed. And I'm curious so it seems it was kind of natural for you to slide into this, and how much, I guess it's a chicken and egg thing. I mean, you thought you had that approach, or you had the mindset, so that got you interested, or did you start hearing about some of this stuff and applying it, and that's what got you going in this direction?
I've really always been fascinated by the idea of the mind over matter, and I wasn't always good at it. I was always a tough kid that knew how to, get in and be scrappy and fight as an athlete on the field. And I always hated losing, right? But a lot of the stuff I didn't learn until later on in life, and a lot of stuff I wasn't taught. And so when I met Brian, I was looking for development, practices and skills that I could develop really in my professional career, because my lacrosse playing career was done. And when I got connected and I started learning about this, I said, why didn't I have this when I was a kid? Why didn't I have this platform? And that's why I wanted to get involved, because I think this could make a huge difference in a young athlete's life. And we all talk about sports shape kids' lives, right? We use sports to develop the other things. Well, here's a platform that actually can coach coaches and athletes on the mindset with everything else that they're doing in youth sports and beyond. But I will say, I understood what it took to be coachable, right? I understood what it meant to work hard. But if I had this platform and it really made sense to me and I understood scores, I might have pushed 10 times harder in certain categories if I would have had it, but I didn't have it. So it was really a combination of coming into my own much later on in life, and like many of us, right, we kind of figure ourselves out later on in life. But what is an athlete? What can they do potentially if they understand who they are early on, right? We see some of these kids, the LeBron James of the world and the Kobe's of the world, like they have this mindset at the high school level. Like they have it, right? They have something. Well, most kids don't. Most kids don't. Most adults don't.
Yeah.
So
we have a question from Christopher Stevenson, which I think is pretty interesting. It actually had occurred to me something similar. He asked, have you used this in a corporate environment for a business? And also, have you considered showing it to the Veterans Administration for mental health use?
I get asked about the corporate thing all the time. We built the platform and the science and the algorithm and with the IP behind the scenes, and it's something that we totally could build out from a corporate structure standpoint. We haven't gone down that path yet, because there's some additional development work and research. But if there was a corporate company that had enough employees that wanted to go down this path with us and kind of played around, tested what we do on the athlete side, we could do that. We haven't focused our time and effort there yet. We're two guys. And from a veteran standpoint, I look at this as most people who come out of the military or have some sort of military background, they're familiar with taking assessments. That's why the West Point and the Army and military have produced more performance coaches and sports psychologists, because they get this stuff all the time, and they have to understand themselves at a really high level because it's life and death. I would love to kind of understand that deeper. If there's ever an opportunity, I'm willing to put the platform in front of anybody.
Speaking of putting the platform in front of people, Patrick Nowak asks how kids take advantage of this. He coaches a team of high school girls. Would love to share the information. You mentioned you're going to make the link available, or make a pass available to everyone
Do
who's
you
watching.
want me to send it out in the chat or email to you and Brad? How do you want to do that?
Brad's going to send it out. He will.
Okay.
He'll send the email. So if you're signed up for this and watching this presentation, I'm sure you're glad you are. And and you'll be getting an email that has the link. So yeah, Casey, you just share it with Brad and me, and we'll get it sent out to everybody.
And I know that Brad is recording this, so we can repurpose this to any other coaches or parents that you guys want to share this with. And I have some other mobile tutorials and links and things that I can share. I'll make sure that I load Brad and Stephen up with a whole host of information that they can share out as a group. And I can tell you that I'm excited to tune in and listen to some of the other speakers. What you guys are doing from this summit and platform is exciting. I'm glad that I can be here and be a part of it. I know I have another talk similar to this with a team tonight at 8 p.m. And I've had some really interesting conversations with high school and college athletic directors and coaches. And I can tell you that we're in unprecedented waters and times, and everybody's looking for solutions. And I can tell you that the teams and the groups that figure out ways to keep their kids motivated and engaged mentally, physically, everything else are going to be the ones that come out of this successful. But because it is a bit of a long road ahead, and I hope that it's coming to an end soon. But you never know.
Yeah, I mean, more announcements every day. We had yesterday, the Mann Cup was canceled for this season, obviously, and today Ontario Series, the Senior B was canceled. There are so many things being canceled, and I think it's, as you said, there are more and more going to come as we go along. And it's so, I mean, I read about the NFL a lot because I find it fascinating, just the way you can study it, reading that. And they've got advantages, like you hear they're doing Zoom meetings. I've been reading, Monday Morning Quarterback and FMIA, and they are so able to meet with, and they're having trouble figuring things out, but they're figuring it out. But they're getting their Zoom meetings, they're getting their breakdowns and everything. But a high school lacrosse team, you don't necessarily have the same access. They certainly don't have the same resources available. So I would think this would be huge.
No, they don't. But I'd go out on a limb and say most kids have this.
Yes.
Right? Most kids have this. Most parents have this. So they have access to my platform. Most kids can go out and run, and they can run sprints, and kids can do push-ups and do sit-ups and do lunges and do air squat. Like I can go out on a limb. I don't care how fit you are as a coach out there. I can give you some sort of workout that would not even last 10 or 15 minutes, that would crush you. And
with no equipment.
With no equipment, right? And I am lucky I have a full gym in my house that has kept myself in somewhat shape, but it's not hard. The motivation is harder than actually getting in there and doing it, and pushing yourselves to a limit in which is actually going to get you better, rather than that was good enough, right? So it's going to be interesting, but I certainly appreciate the group. I don't know how many people joined the call, but I appreciate all of you guys taking some time this afternoon to talk with me, listen to me, and hopefully I can be an effective resource for you guys moving forward and your programs. And I'm available to chat if you have any questions offline too.
Yeah, and the presentation will be available in the archives this evening, and the contact info for Casey will be in the email that you get to answer a question. Another question we got, someone was wondering about getting in touch with you for further questions and following up. And Brad will send the contact info so people can follow up with you directly. And so I'm sure you'll be hearing from people. I just want to take the chance to thank you for coming on, and I'm sure everyone appreciated it. When we were setting this up, I mean, Brad did most of the work, and he asked me to host some of the sessions, and I said, well, which ones? And he said, go through and let's see which ones you want. I said, mental side of the game, I want to do it.
Listen, I'm glad that you hosted, and look, I'll just end on, there's so much information that we measure. I don't expect any coach or athlete to be able to digest it all at once. The platform was built to give you access to leverage and use this information over the course of time. And that's important for people to know, that it may take time to see results, but start learning and understanding this stuff now. That's going to effectively create the change later.
Perfect. Thank you so much once again. Thanks everyone who joined in. Thanks Casey for taking the time. We're going to wrap up there. The program goes on. My next chat is at 6 o'clock with Brian Shanahan, and
Right.
building a program in Mimico. Everything that you've talked about reminds me of last night's chat with Kurt Milosky about building team unity and some of the things he was saying, integrity and character. Lots of really interesting stuff. And I'm going to let Oboto Francis, who just asked a question. He's from Uganda, one of the newest additions to World Lacrosse. He's wondering what you think about introducing the program to Africa Lacrosse. So I'm going to let him get in touch with you. Oboto, you will get Casey's contact information. And my guess is you're cool with that?
Absolutely. I happen to have spoken with a woman. Her name's Cynthia. Her last name's slipping my mind this morning. She is a leader in Kenya, and she has a company in which she's trying to connect athletes to sports professionals. And I spoke with her about the platform. This is designed to help any athletes around the world. So wherever you are, if you have friends that play lacrosse or soccer in London or UK or in Asia or India, it doesn't matter. This is, when you look at the categories that we measure and that we're trying to develop overall, it's very universal.
So Oboto, to answer your question, it's already happening in Africa, and there's certainly plenty of room to expand on that, as with everything. And
Absolutely.
And all sports. I mean, we really obviously have been focused on lacrosse. I talked a little bit rowing, but we saw football, soccer. I saw a cricket group in there, I believe.
Yeah, and look, the pictures don't necessarily represent every sport that has taken place or used it. But we wanted the platform to be universal and inclusive, right? Male, female, all sports. Mindset matters. I don't care if you're playing American football or you're a swimmer. You're thinking about these things all the time, and you're a tennis player or you're a golfer. I mean, it matters. So
team sports, individual sports.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Casey, thank you. Everyone who was here, thank you. We're going to wrap it up.
So much. Appreciate it.
Folks, keep checking it out. We got lots more great seminars coming.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve.